right now one of the big political issues, especially among the left, right? They want to forgive the student loans and they want to make college free, right? That's like a big thing. Like we have all these students with all this debt and it's bad, which I agree. It's a terrible situation. But what the left doesn't want to accept is responsibility for creating the situation in the first place. It is government's fault that all these student loans exist. Without government, there would be no student loans. You know, once upon a time, people didn't borrow money to go to college. Nobody borrowed money to go to college, right? My father went to college, and his parents were poor. I mean, yeah, look, my dad said they weren't sure if they were upper, lower class or lower middle class, but you know, his dad was a carpenter, and so he went to college, and his parents didn't have any money to send him to college, and there were no loans. So how did my dad go? He got a summer job, and he worked his way through school, which is what most people did. You worked your way through school. So here's what happened. You know, around the 1960s, once the 18-year-olds could vote, this was a big thing. They lowered the voting age from 21 down to 28, right? So now you have all these 18-year-olds that are about to go to college. And so here's what the politicians said to all the 18-year-olds, the Democratic politicians. They said, you know, you shouldn't have to work your summers. You shouldn't have to have jobs while you're in school. You should just be able to go to school and enjoy yourself. And we're going to make it possible for you to borrow money to go to school by guaranteeing the loans, because normally the bank wouldn't lend you any money because you have no credit history, you have no assets, so you're not going to be able to get a loan.
What year
we're
was
going
this?
to guarantee the loan, and that way you'll be able to get the loan. Now somebody else won't get it, some businessman won't get the loan because we're going to make them loan it to you, and now you won't have to have that summer job, and then when you graduate and have a good job, you'll just pay back the money. And it sounded like a great deal. Hey, I want to party now. I don't want to work. I'm going to have a good time. And when I get my college degree and I'm making a lot more money, well, it'll be no problem to pay back the loan. So that's how it all started. The government came in and they basically created an incentive for banks to make loans to kids with no assets and no credit history.
What year was this, Peter? What year was this?
In the 60s. I don't know the exact year.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, so then once the colleges saw that all these kids can borrow money to go to college, well, they were like, this is great. I'm just going to raise prices. So all of a sudden, tuition started to go up. I mean, for a long time, you can look back in the future in history, college tuition used to be pretty stable. It didn't go up very much until the 60s, until the government really got involved. And so as soon as these colleges saw that the kids had access to all this money, they started jacking up prices. And then, of course, the universities started competing. Who's got the best gymnasium? Who's got the best, housing? All kinds of other incentives. And then everything became bloated, and they kept raising their prices. And then, in order to get the votes of the students, the government kept raising the limits on how much loans they would guarantee. So it became this self-perpetuating cycle where the more money the government guaranteed that the students can borrow, the more the colleges could charge in tuition.
Oh,
and so tuition kept skyrocketing. And then as tuition goes up, it's like, oh, nobody can afford to go to college. We need more loans. So the loans themselves became the reason that people needed the loans, because the loans were why college was so expensive. And so now you needed a loan to go to college. But without the loan, tuition would have come down. You see, if there were no student loans at all, and right now the government has actually taken over, they don't just guarantee student loans, they loan directly to the students. If there were no student loans at all, if the government just said no more student loans, all of a sudden the colleges would be, oh my God, we need to cut costs. Otherwise we'll have no customers. Nobody can afford to go without these loans. And they would cut costs. They would start looking, they would streamline their business like everybody else. I mean, any business that could charge whatever the hell they wanted because the government could borrow the money, right? If you had a restaurant where the government was going to guarantee to pay the bill of everybody who dined there, I mean, shit, the restaurant could charge whatever it wanted. Oh, a hamburger is $1,000. Oh, the government's going to pay? Yeah, what do you care? It's because people are paying with their own money that they got to keep the cost down.
And this situation's been going on for so long that it's just now how they do business.
Right, but now see, college is now so expensive, kids think they need government to afford it. And they don't realize that the only reason it's so expensive is because of government. That's the Harry Brown cripple you and then give you a crutch.
You're freaking me out, Peter Schiff.
College so expensive.
You're freaking me out, man. Jesus Christ!
But there's
what
an
a
easy
mess.
solution.
Okay,
get
tell me.
rid of the loans. Get rid of the loans. You know, let colleges lower their tuition.
Well, that
and then
might be
and let people
anyway.
go back to what my dad did.
Look,
work your way through college. No big deal.
We're in this crazy situation where a lot of kids are going to have to go back to school through Zoom. Even Harvard, they're talking about having these Harvard kids do school online for $40,000 a year. Wasn't that what you did?
Well, I know. Look,
yeah, higher than 40. It's more than 50. Jamie says $50,000 a year to do school online. That's hilarious.
Education at this point is a racket. I mean, most people will never recoup the cost of a college degree. I mean, the colleges are out there perpetuating this myth, right? That, going to college is your ticket to success. That you have to go, and if you don't go, I think I mentioned the video on your show, the podcast last time, where I was down on Bourbon Street in New Orleans, and I was interviewing all the people there that were working, that had college degrees, but were doing menial jobs, like bartending, bouncers in strip clubs, pedicab drivers. They all had college degrees. Some of them had 2 or 3 degrees. And, they were doing stuff that, you didn't need to go to college to do. And so the colleges perpetuate this myth. Look, with the internet today and the access to online classes and self-help, you can educate yourself. You don't need to buy this overpriced certificate that says that you graduated from some college to prove that you're competent. I mean, it doesn't even prove anything now. In fact, the government did 2 things. They made a college degree very expensive, and then they made it practically worthless. Because before the government started subsidizing college, fewer people actually went, because only the people that could really benefit from the degree went. And so then if you had a college degree, it actually meant something in the marketplace. Now, since everybody goes to school, because it's, you get the money from the government, everybody's got a college degree, they mean nothing. So now you got to get a master's degree. You got to get a PhD. You're in school till you're in your 30s. I mean, it's ridiculous that we spend so much time. It benefits the bureaucracy. It doesn't benefit the kids. So this bubble, this is a gigantic bubble in higher education. It's a bubble in lower education too. I mean, some of America's wealthiest men, they didn't go to college. In fact, way back when, they didn't even go to high school. A lot of these billionaires, dropped out of grammar school. But today, with the internet, it should be even easier for people than it ever was. Because one of the things that the colleges had is they had the libraries, right? They had all the books. So if you wanted to get access to these books, you needed to get into these libraries. Well, it's all on the internet now. They don't have a monopoly on anything. And believe me, you see how much they charge for these books? It's crazy.
It's such a good point.
These professors write these books, and they force the kids to buy these books, paying $100 for a textbook.
Exactly.
I mean, it's ridiculous. It is a racket, right? And it's all supported by government. And the problem is, if you come out against this educational racket, oh, you're a bad person. You're anti-education. I'm not a bad person. I care about the kids who are getting ripped off, who are getting indoctrinated, not educated, and who are being saddled with a mountain of debt.
Can I
and
throw
the
something
government
at
says
you?
The solution is free education. Right?
Can I throw something at you?
If you think education is expensive now, wait till you see how much more it costs when it's free.
Do you think that the current state of colleges, when we think about colleges today, we think about social justice warriors, we think about these kids growing up in this weird future where they're going to graduate online. Do you think that the extreme liberal socialist bend that you see in colleges would be different if there was a free market? Do you think people would be more realistic in terms of if all universities were free market based? Do you think people would be more realistic in terms of their expectations for other people in the future and not look towards the government as being this piggy bank that they could dig into and pull things out of?
Yeah, I think so. And I think one of the driving forces is a lot of these universities, they always want to hire professors, especially when it comes to economics or some of the political science. They want to hire people who have worked for government. And they want to see some of their professors go to government and then come back. And the only economists that will get a government job are the Keynesian economists who want to pretend that government can actually help the economy. I mean, there is no role in government for a free market economist who says, leave it alone, let the market function, right? That guy's not going to get a government job. right? The government wants to hire people that are going to justify more government spending because that's how they buy their votes. So you get these big government Keynesian economists who go between government and academia, and they go back and forth. And so it perpetuates this cycle. But there are, look, you can find some examples of universities that teach, real economics, free market Austrian economics, but they're in the minority.
It's a weird way of looking at it, right? The idea that the government paying for everything, making everything more expensive, is going to make more people that are dependent upon not competing and being a part of this weird system where you think you're owed things, right?
Yeah, I mean, look at AOC, right? I mean, she was an economics major. But look, she's completely ignorant about basic economics. I mean, the thing is, she thinks she knows a lot. She doesn't know anything. It's like a lot of times when people learn economics in a university, they end up knowing less about economics after they graduate than before they enroll. They end up, they lose their common sense, and they get spoon-fed a bunch of nonsense, which they end up, regurgitating throughout their careers.
I mean, she's 28, right? I think what she is an idealist. I think she's a kind person who has this visionary perspective of how she wants the world to play out. And when she says those things, I think she's saying those things because she feels like she's a force of good. What you're saying in terms of competition creates the best solution for everybody because the most effective and viable method is the one that rises to the top, and that's the one that people support with their money if they have total freedom. But if you have the government that steps in and dictates that you have to go this way or that way, or it has to cost this much or that much, then the government itself becomes a business. And the problem is it needs to verify or justify its own existence by creating more and more regulations, more and more problems, more and more impediments to freedom of competition.
Yeah, every time the government writes a regulation or passes a law, we're less free because those regulations and those laws are limiting our freedom because they're restricting our choices.
Right, but to bring the two of us together, to bring everybody together, don't you think that maybe there's an opportunity where people can recognize that doesn't mean you're a bad person. You're just looking at the actual game. And there's a lot of bullshit going on where people are pretending what's happening is different than what it is because they want to feel better about the results.
The people on the left actually think people like me are bad and evil because we don't agree with their programs. We must be mean people. We must be heartless people because we're against all the good that they want to do.
Okay, but stop. But that's a reductionist argument.
The rational thought, because they don't have those thoughts.
Right, but that's a reductionist argument that doesn't really make any sense. But you'll entertain it, even though it doesn't make any sense. The people that are really paying attention know that doesn't make any sense. It's not that you're a heartless person. You're not heartless at all. You're explaining what is actually going on in terms of government subsidizing education. Yeah. You're talking about competition in terms of the free market. None of what you're saying, just from me to you, is in any way conveying a sense that you're a heartless person. But that is the narrative when people don't agree with what you're saying because they have in their head an ideologically based alternative to what you're saying.